Okay, good morning. What we are going to discuss today is about perform mensuration and calculation or MC. In this topic, our objectives are to perform basics mensuration of the following computer components. The first one is the memory, data storage capacity, processor, and the video card. Okay? So, but before we proceed, okay, let me show you first a video.
You may already know that there are many important parts inside a computer. But what exactly do they do? Let's take a look inside and learn about the various components that make a computer work. Whether it's a desktop computer or a laptop, every computer has a large circuit board called a motherboard. This contains some of the most important parts of the computer, such as the CPU, also known as the Central Processing Unit or processor. The CPU can be considered the brain of the computer because it processes information and carries out commands. Since it tends to get hot, it's covered by a piece of metal called a heatsink, which draws heat away from the processor. The motherboard also contains the computer's RAM, or random access memory. This is the short-term memory that the computer uses whenever it's performing calculations. However, you cannot store your files there, because the RAM is cleared when you shut off the computer. The hard drive provides long-term storage, keeping all of the computer's data even when it's turned off. Many hard drives use a magnetic platter to store data, but many newer computers have solid-state drives, which are faster and more durable, but also more expensive. On many desktop computers, the motherboard has expansion slots that allow you to upgrade by adding expansion cards. You can add a video card to get better graphics performance, or you can add a wireless card to connect to your wireless home network. Most laptops, however, don't have expansion slots. Of course, the computer's components need electricity to run. The power supply unit is designed to take power from the wall outlet and send it to all of the different components that need power. Laptops also contain a built-in battery that lets you use them anywhere. A computer is a pretty complex machine, but now that you've seen what goes on inside, it should be a little less mysterious.
GCF Global, creating opportunities for a better life.
Okay, so that is a short presentation of what we call different functions of different parts of the computer. Now, so let us see. Okay, so isahin po natin ngayon ang yung apat na binanggit ko kanina. So, the first one will be, the computer memory. Okay, so computer memory, it is a device that is being used to store data or programs, okay, sequence of instructions. Okay, so we know that without programs or without any data being processed the computer, our computer is useless. So program is being installed in our computer, okay, to function so that our computer will function. Okay, so the computer memory, it is a temporary or it can be a temporary, it can be a permanent basis for use in an electronic digital computer. So we know that computer represents information in a binary code. So excuse me, yun lang ang nababasa ng computer. So it is written in a sequence of zeros and ones. Okay, 0 and 1. So yun lang ang kayang basahin ni computer. So every data that is being processed inside the computer, every program that is being processed or installed in the computer, it is being translated, or it is being what we call it is being translate, okay, convert, okay, translate, convert, okay, into a binary code which is that represents 0 and 1. Okay, 0 is negative and 1 is positive. Okay, so binary data. Okay. So computer memory. So there are different types of computer memory. So hindi lang iisa. Pag sinabi natin computer memory, yun na yun. So there are different kinds or different types of computer memory. So in general, memory can be divided into a primary and secondary memory. Okay. So there are numerous types of memory when discussing just the primary memory. So some types of primary memory includes the following, like the first one is the cache memory. So it belongs to what we call a primary memory. So this cache memory is a temporary storage area, okay, known as a cache, or is more readily available to the processor than the computer's main memory source. So when we say cache memory, it is the memory of the processor. Okay? It is called CPU memory. Okay, sapagkat this memory is the one that help the processor, okay, so to process the data. So, ang kanyang takbo nito, so when the CPU needs some information or some data, so ang gagawin niya, so he will ask the RAM, okay, the random access memory, okay, hey, kailangan ko itong kailangan ko itong data na ito. Then the RAM will contact hard disk wherein kung saan man nakasave yung inyong information na yun. Then kukunin ito ni RAM. Then ito ay ipapasa niya kay CPU. So when your CPU has a larger capacity of cache memory, so mas marami siyang data na ma-store sa sarili niya at mas mabilis ang magiging processing na mangyayari. So the more the higher the cache memory is, so mas mabilis or mas maganda yung performance ng sinasabi nating ng ating CPU. Okay, the Central Processing Unit. Okay, the next one is what we call the RAM or the Random Access, okay, Memory. Okay, the term is based on the fact that any storage location can be accessed directly by the processor. Ayun. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na from the processor. So ang kanyang laging kino-call out, ang kanyang laging ina-access for some information or for some data is what we call the RAM. Okay, so yan, directly na dyan nakikipag-communicate si processor for certain information. So hindi siya nakikipag-communicate kay hard disk, hindi siya nakikipag-communicate in any other storage device, but he is communicating or directly communicating, directly access by the CPU directly access the RAM. Okay, the next one is what we call the dynamic RAM. Okay, DRAM. DRAM is a type of semiconductor memory that is typically used by a data or program code needed by a computer processor to function. Yan. So, a type of RAM. The next one is what we call the static RAM. When we say static RAM, okay, so it retains the data bits in its memory for as long as the power is applied on it. So ito yung mga RAM na habang may kuryente, nandoon yung mga data na ka-store sa kanya. But when the computer shuts down, okay, kung patay na ang computer, wala nang kuryente, so nabubura din yung mga data na naka-store dito sa tinatawag nating static RAM. Okay, the next one is what we call the double data rate. Okay, so the double data rate or SDRAM. So when we say double data rate or SDRAM, okay, this can be theoretically improved, okay, hirap na memory clock speed to at least 200 megahertz. Okay, theoretically, yun. So, meaning ito yung mga RAM na noong pang ginagamit, yung mga yung mga PC 100 pa, yung mga lumang-lumang pa, mga year 2001, ganyan, 2002, yung mga bago-bago pa ako sa pagre-repair ng computer. So, ang speed pa ng mga memory noon, at least 200 megahertz. Pag may ganyan ka, talaga mabilis na yung computer mo. Kasi yung iba, 64 megahertz lang, 120. Okay? So, itong SDRAM ay at least ang kaya theoretically improved memory clock speed at least to 200 MHz. Then, in-improve siya. Nung in-improve siya, ang susunod sa kanya ay what we call a double data rate for synchronous dynamic RAM. Okay, DDR4 RAM. So ito na yung meron nito ngayon. Okay, it is a type of DRAM that has a high bandwidth interface and is the successors to its previous DDR2 and DDR3 versions. Okay. Sa mga lumang mga computer, mayroon pa rin mga DDR3 version or mga DDR2 na mga memory. Okay, so medyo kayo nga lang, pag yun ang masira, mahirap na siya hanapin sa ngayon. Okay? So wala ka na mabibiling brand nyo. So usually mga DDR4 na ngayon ang mabibiling brand nyo natin. So DDR3, DDR2, second hand na yan pag tayo ay bumili. Okay, another type of what we call the memory is what we call the Rambus Dynamic RAM. Okay, so it is a memory subsystem that promises to transfer up to 1.6 billion bytes per second. Okay, so medyo mabilis itong RAM na ito. Okay, so the subsystem consists of RAM, okay, the RAM controller, the bus that connects RAM to the microprocessor and the device in the computer that use it. Kaya medyo napakabilis niya kasi directly siya na connected to the processor. Okay, the other kind of memory is what we call the read-only memory or the ROM. Okay, so it is a type of computer storage containing non-volatile permanent data that normally can only be read and not written to. So, ito yung mga memory na nakalagay sa computer natin na binabasa lang siya, read-only lang. Okay, hindi siya pwedeng baguhin, hindi siya pwedeng burahin, hindi siya pwedeng i-customize. So, kung anong nakalagay doon na data, yun na yun. So, read-only lang siya. Okay, it is a permanent data and read-only, okay, memory siya. Okay, so the next one is what we call the programmable ROM. Okay, when we say programmable ROM, it is this ROM can be modified once by a user. So ito yung pwede mo siyang i-modify, kaso lang minsanan lang. So once lang. Okay. So once na na-modified mo na siya, na bago mo na siya, hindi mo na siya uli pwedeng i-modify. Okay? Minsanan lang. Isang beses mo lang siyang i-modify. Okay. The next one is what we call the erasable ROM. Okay? Erasable, programmable, read-only memory. Okay? That can be erased and reused. So, ito naman yung mga tinatawag nating mga pwedeng i-erase na mga memory at pwede rin natin siyang ulitin, gagamitin natin ulit. Okay, programmable and can be erased and can be reused. And the other one is what we call the electrically erasable ROM. Okay, when we say electrically erasable ROM, okay, it is being a user-modified ROM that can be erased and reprogrammed repeatedly. So, ano ang gamit? Through application of higher than normal electrical voltage. Okay, so unlike EEPROM, okay, EEPROM do not need to be removed from the computer to be modified. However, an EEPROM chip must be erased and reprogrammed in its entirely, not selectively. Okay, so yung isa kanina, yung EEPROM, itong sa una, okay, sa pagtawag natin, kung gusto mo siyang i-reprogram, i-erase, so erasure is caused by shining an intense ultraviolet light through a window designed into a memory chip. Okay, so kailangan ba siyang tanggalin sa parts ng computer at may device para siya pwedeng i-reprogram by through ultraviolet light. Pero itong electrically erasable ROM, okay, ang ginagamit naman sa kanya ay kuryente. Okay, higher the normal electrical voltage at hindi na kinakailangan i-remove yung device from nakakabit siya sa motherboard. Hindi na siya kailangan tanggalin. Okay? So, doon na lang talaga pwede mo na siyang i-reprogram. Kaso, ang problema niya or ang kanyang requirements, pag i-reprogram mo siya, dapat lahat-lahat ay i-reprogram mo. Okay, so hindi pwede na kalahati lang, hindi pwede na yung first part lang, okay? So it must be reprogrammed entirely. So yun lang yung tinatawag nating condition when you are going to reprogram the electrically erasable RAM. Unlike the others, na pwede mong i-reprogram yung parts lang. Okay, pwede mong i-erase, yung parts lang. Okay, so pero si electrically erasable RAM, you need to reprogram, you need to erase it entirely. Okay. The next one is what we call the virtual memory. Okay, so when we say virtual memory, it is a memory management technique where secondary memory can be used as if it were a part of the main memory. Okay, so virtual memory uses hardware and software to enable the computer to compensate for physical memory shortage by temporarily transferring data from RAM to disk storage. So, anong ginagamit na memory dito? So, pag kinukulang ng memory si RAM, okay, kumukuha siya ng additional memory from the disk storage, from your hard disk. Kaya ang nangyayari, nakukompensate yung kakulungan ni RAM. So, ang tawag natin doon sa memory na ginamit ni RAM from the hard disk or from this disk storage, that is what we call the virtual memory. As if na tinatawag natin na malaki yung memory mo. Okay? So, halimbawa, ang actual lang mo talaga ay 8 GB, pero since na shortage ka doon sa memory na yan, so the RAM needs to use a virtual memory function. Okay? So, itong management technique na ito para makompensate yung kulang. So, alam mo, kinakailangan mo ay 12 GB, 8 GB lang memory mo. So, kinakailangan niyang kumuha ng memory kay hard disk. So, kaya minsan, makikita natin, mas mabibilis yung mga memory ng mga naka-SSD na unlike sa HDD kasi mas mabilis yung response ng mga SSD kaysa sa HDD. Yun. So, yun lang. Kaso nga lang, siyempre, iba pa rin yung purely na RAM ang gamit mo at hindi ka gumagamit ng virtual memory. So, mas mabilis pa rin yun. Kaya advice na kung kinakailangan mo ng mas malaking RAM, you need to upgrade your RAM para hindi siya mahirapan at hindi na siya manghihiram ng memory pa kay hard disk. Okay. So, what are the measurement that we use in our RAM, okay, in our memory? So, speed. So, usually, when we talk about speed, it is measured by megahertz. Okay? So, when we say size, it is measured by megabytes or gigabytes. So, example, when we say DDR RAM, okay, it is the name. Okay, then 400 megahertz speed of the RAM, 256 MB RAM size. Ayun. So, halimbawa, DDR4. Okay, so 1200 MHz or 1600 MHz or 2400 MHz or 3600 MHz, 3200 MHz. Tapos, ang size niya ay 8 GB. Yan. So, usually, the most common RAM size are 16 MB, 32 MB, 64 MB, 128, 512, okay, 256, okay, 1 GB, 2 GB, or hanggang pataas ng pataas. Okay, DDR RAM will only go into a motherboard supporting DDR. This is the same for SDRAM or DDR2 RAM. So, there's always a compatibility between the RAM and the motherboard. So, if your motherboard only supports DDR3, so you cannot install a DDR4 memory. So, you need to use a DDR3 memory. Okay. So, para maisalpak mo siya. Kasi iba yung hindi mo siya maipasok. Masisira lang. It's either the RAM or the motherboard pag pinilit ang hindi pwede. Yun. Yeah. So, reminder. So, pag hindi talaga pwede, ay huwag pilitin. Okay, so, masasaktan ka lang talaga. Okay. Next is what we call the data storage devices. Okay, storage capacity nowadays is no longer depend on the physical capacity of our computer. So, halimbawa, naka-install lang dyan sa computer mo is sabihin natin 120 GB. So, it is not limited. The capacity of the computer is not only limited to 120 GB. Why? Because we have different kinds of storage devices now that we are using in our computer. So, tingnan natin ano-ano pa yung iba't ibang mga klaseng mga data storage device na sinasabi natin ginagamit natin. So, it can be physically or it can be virtually. Okay, so, hindi na natin, kuminsan hindi na tayo ng problema pa ng kung limit ng capacity ng computer natin because there are other available options, okay, to expand or to compensate, okay, the shortage of our data storage. Okay, now what are those other data storage devices that we have today? First is what we call the cloud storage. So when we say cloud storage, so hindi ito yung ulap na nakikita natin sa langit, okay? So this cloud storage, it is the newest and the most versatile type of storage for computer. Okay, the word cloud is not one place or object, so it is not a place or what we call object, but it is rather a huge collection of servers housed in data centers around the world. Okay, yun. So, there are different servers that is being housed in different parts of our world. Tapos, doon, sila yung mga nag-cater or sila yung mga nag-offer na sinasabi nating cloud storage. So, if you need a space, okay, so you can, what we call, you can purchase or you can rent a certain space, okay, from that cloud storage with a minimum, with a certain amount. Okay, depende po sa company or depende sa services na ibinibigay. So, it is the newest and the very versatile. Bakit? Kasi pag ang iyong information ay nasa cloud storage na, no need to bring any physical drive, physical hard disk or whatever. So, basta may computer ka lang or a cellphone or whatever and may internet, you can access your files, okay, anywhere, anytime, okay, in the cloud storage. Okay, the next one is what we call the external storage device. Okay, these are the digital storage devices that are external from computers. When we say external, nasa labas ng computer, hindi siya naka-install sa loob. Okay, so what are those external devices? The first one is what we call the external HDD and SSD. Okay, so dalawa na kasi tayo ngayon. Noon ay HDD lang, hard disk drive lang. So ngayon may lumabas na mas bago, mas mabilis, mas maganda, which is the SSD or solid state drive. Okay, when we say HDD, so usually ang capacity nito ngayon ay makakabili ka maybe 20 terabyte apps. Okay, so yun. Depende. So the more na malaki o malaki yung capacity ng hard disk drive mo, so siyempre mas mahal siya. At ang mga SSD, okay, I think may mga nag-offer na din na mas mataas pa. Okay, so ayon doon sa kasama sa nakita ko lang ay I think 8 terabyte of storage device. So, I don't know if may mas mataas pa ngayon na ino-offer. So, usually, doon lang nagre-range. The HDD, so 20 terabytes, or the SSD, 8 terabytes. So, siyempre, mas mahal ang SSD compared to what we call the HDD. Okay, so the next one is what we call the flash memory devices. Okay, so, ito yung mga tinatawag nating mga USB. Pero ang totoo talaga, ito ay pag sinasabi natin flash memories, they are the USB flash drive. Okay, a flash memory device that contains trillions of interconnected flash memory cells that store data. So, yun yung components na makikita natin sa loob. So, these cells hold millions of transistors that when switched on or off, it represents the number 1, the ones and zeros in binary code. allowing the computer to read and write information in that flash drive. Okay, so sabi ko kanina, one of the most recognizable type of flash memory device is the USB flash drive. Okay, so yung mga tinatawag lang nating USB. So wala lang sample dito, but they are what we can call them a USB flash drive. So sa ngayon, kung titingnan natin usually the capacity, the maximum capacity, may mabibili tayong mga 2 terabyte flash drive, maybe higher than that. Okay, siguro may mga 4 terabytes, 6 terabytes na. Okay, so the higher the capacity of the flash drive, okay, so siyempre, mas mahal siya. Okay, pero it is not advisable to invest to the flash drive yung mga malalaki kasi to my experience, kung saan pa yung mga matataas ang capacity na USB flash drive, yung minsan ang madaling makurap. Okay, kaya usually pag may mga yung 16 GB, okay, 16 gig is enough, 8 gig is enough, 32, okay? So pag ikaw naman gumagawa ng mga installer, okay, so 16 gig is enough. Okay, aside from malagyan mo siya ng Windows installer, malalagyan mo rin siya ng iba pang mga apps na para isang saksakan ka na lang na lahat ng apps na install mo nandoon na sa flash drive mo. Okay, and the next one, okay, the last one is what we call the optical storage device. So when we say optical storage device, those are the devices such as CDs, DVD, okay, the Blu-ray disc that are used for a lot more than playing music and videos. Okay, noon, ito yung uso. So hindi pa uso noon ang mga USB flash drive or whatever external hard drive. So nandito lang yung mga CD. Gumagamit pa kami noon ng mga rewritable CD, writable CD, okay? May mga read-only rin na mga CD lang, okay? Na pag once mo lang siyang pwedeng baguhin, hindi mo na siya uli mabubura uli. Okay, usually ang mga capacity lang nito ng mga ordinary CD, it can be 700 MB lang of data. Pero pag mga DVD, DL or ay umaabot siya ng 8.5 gigabyte, okay? 8.5 GB. Pero pag mga Blu-ray, okay, yun yung mga nakaka-store ng mga HD, mga high definition ng mga movies. So it can store between 25 and 128 GB of data. So depende siya sa optical storage device ang sinasabi natin ang magiging capacity niya. So kung ordinary lang, mga 700 MB lang yan, pero kung gusto mo nang i-store sa CD mo ay malaki, so mga 100 MB, ay 100 GB, so you need to use the Blu-ray. Okay, kasi ang capacity niya is between 25 to 128 GB. Okay, so the measurement of the hard drives can be in physical, okay? Hard drive's physical size. So meron tayong tinatawag na the 2.5 inches na HDD, hard disk drive, or even SSD. So those are the hard drives that we use for some laptops. Okay, sa mga laptops yun ang nilagay kasi maliit lang siya. Pero yung mga malalaking hard disk na nakikita natin sa mga computers, they're the 3.5 inches, okay, hard disk. So they are used on desktop. Okay, so the capacity of hard drive refers to the amount of data that it can hold. Okay, kung gaano kadami yung data na pwede niyang hawakan, yun yung sinatawag nating magiging capacity niya. So sa ngayon, so I think pinaka-latest na kaya kung ilang terabytes na, okay, ang kayang i-hold ng isang hard disk. Okay, now, then the third one is what we call the computer processor. So ano-ano bang mga kayang gawin o ano ba ang mga ginagawa functions? Mainly, 4 main functions of the CPU. Okay, the first one is what we call the basic arithmetic. So pag sinabi natin basic arithmetic, those are mathematical functions, the additions, subtractions, divisions, okay? So, iba-iba. Okay, so basic arithmetic, math. So, kay processor yan, pinaprocess. So, siya ang gumagana dyan. So, meron tayong tinatawag din na logic. Okay, any logical, okay, sa programs or apps or any logical processing So si processor ang gumagawa niyan. Controlling, si processor din. At the input-output operations. Okay, so si processor ang gumagawa niyan. So yung mga sinasaksak, yung sa input-output, ito yung mga sinasaksak nating iba't ibang mga devices. Okay, so sa ating system unit, okay, sa ating computer. Now, so it is being managed or being, processed in our CPU. Now, what are the measurement that we use when it comes to CPU? When we say speed measurement, what we mean is the clock speed, okay, which is measured by megahertz or gigahertz. Okay, so yan ang tinatawag nating clock speed. So the most common measures, okay, of CPU speed is the clock speed, which is measured in megahertz or gigahertz. So 1 gigahertz is equals to 1,000 megahertz. So when we say the speed is 2.4 gigahertz, okay, we could also say it, or it can also be expressed as 2,400 megahertz. So the higher the clock speed, the more operation the CPU can execute per second. Okay, so tandaan natin that CPU speed is the central factor in a computer's performance. So yun dapat ang unang-una nating tingnan. Okay, maliban doon sa siyempre kasama na doon yung pinaka frontside bus niya at yung sinasabi nating cache memory na kung saan tumutulong rin para sa speed ni computer ng ating CPU. So, vital yon na we need to consider the computers, and in our computer performance is what we call the speed of our CPU. And now, the last one is the video card. Okay, so it is used to create a picture on a display. So, kung walang video card itong aking computer, wala kayo nakikita ngayon. Diba? So, yun yung pinaka-function niya. So, siya yung nagpo-project. It is an output. So, diyan nagdumadaan para itong output device natin, what we call our monitor, ay magkaroon ng display. So, it is being processed by the video card. So, minsan, tinatawag natin itong display adapter, graphic cards. It can also be called video adapter, video board, video controller, video card, or okay, so iba-ibang tawag. So minsan we also use some what we call an expansion card para makapaglagay tayo ng video card. Or others are also using external video card. So para maging maganda yung sinasabi nating output nila sa kanilang display. Okay. So, we have here some example of what we call the visual overview of a computer video card. So, itong isa, okay, it is an older model AGP video card. Ito yung mga lumang-luma pa. So, AGP pa siya, sa kulay itim ito na sinasalpak natin. Okay? So, ito yung mga uso nun. Pag naka-AGP video card ka nun, nako, halimaw na ang computer mo. Pero ngayon, meron na tayong tinatawag na PCIe video card or PCI Express video card. So ito na yung may mga matataas na mga capacity. Okay? So kung titingnan natin yung pinaka-output niya, okay, so dito sa sa older model, so DVI is video VGA. Pero dito sa ating PCI Express video card, so usually HDMI, DVI, yung mga higher capacity pa na pag-output ng what we call pag-output natin ng video. Okay, so paano pa natin mini-measure ang ating what we call ang ating video card? Okay, unang-una is in its size. Okay, we use it as MB. The clock rate, megahertz, and the bandwidth is GB. Okay, so halimbawa ang size niya ay 128 MB with a clock rate of 2400 MHz with a bandwidth of 64 GB. Okay, so one thing that make an impact to our video card is what we call the RAM duct. The speed impact the image quality. So how often the screen can be refreshed per second and the maximum resolution you can display. Ayun. So importante yun, lalong-lalo na ito sa mga gamers or sa mga artists o sa mga designers. So kinakailangan alam natin kung sinatawag natin the maximum refresh rate niya per second. Okay, baka napakabagal yan, binaril ka na, patay ka na pala, pero sa ano mo, sa display mo nakatayo ka pa, di ba? Or kung minsan sa bagal ng tawag dito ng video card mo, may kalaban na sa harapan mo. Sa iyo, wala ka pa nakikita pero nabaril ka na pala, ikaw nakikita mo lumalabas pa lang. So, importante yun yung sinasabi natin is refresh rate per second. Yung bilis ng video pag lumabas niya. Yung pag-refresh niya. Then, the maximum resolution. Okay, so yung mahalaga rin yun. Kasi dapat nakikita natin at least, dapat napakalapit sa tinatawag nating real color na pag-print natin ay ganun-ganun din yung sa nakikita natin sa display. So, mahalaga. So, mahalaga rin yung sinasabi natin the different function ng what we call the video card. So, baka doon nakadepende yung ating nakikita, kung ano yung ating nakikita sa ating monitor. So, those are the main parts na we need to take note of sa ating mga computer. Okay, so the memory, okay, the storage device, okay, the CPU, and the last one is the video card. So that is all for today, guys, and God bless everyone.